me begin. This is TWSN. You ain't heard about us yet, well you better know now, because it's the place that it all goes down. Get up, let me begin. This is TWSN. You ain't heard about us yet, well you better know now, because it's the place that it all goes down.
Shout out Young Swish. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of State of the Jungle with Malik Wright, presented by the 𝗏𝗏 Sports Network. I'm your host, Malik Wright. Joined by my co-hosts as always, 𝗦𝗡𝗢𝗏𝗦𝗐𝗏, Logan Fulmer, and Evan McPhillips. We have a jam-packed show, a lot of stuff to get into, a lot of stuff to talk about. This is our Thanksgiving special, Thanksgiving-themed show. We're supposed to be a turkey in here somewhere.
We got some.
All right, we got some. Okay,
up.
making sure we got some turkeys in here, you know. But we hope that you and your family have an awesome Thanksgiving. We really hope so, and we appreciate you guys for making our show a part of your regular routine. That all being said, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you guys never miss when we go live or when we upload content. Boys, the return of Joe Burrow is happening this week. And I think every Bengals fan is excited for Joe Burrow's return, not because they're expecting Joe Burrow to lead the Bengals on a magical run here where they're going to pretty much wipe the deck clean and win every, one of their upcoming games and then make a playoff push and all that kind of stuff like that. I think more people are just excited to see the true number 9 return to the starting lineup. With that being said, it does bring some interesting things we have to talk about. Some of the stuff we're going to talk about in today's show is the defense. The defense turned a corner because the defense looked a lot better, right, this week than they had in previous weeks. We're also going to talk about Joe Burrow's glowing endorsement of the coaching staff, which made me a little bit. We're also going to talk about what to expect from Joe Burrow. And then we're going to finally give our prediction on if we all believe that the Cincinnati Bengals could upset the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore on Thanksgiving night. But with that being said, I first want to talk about Joe Burrow. I first want to talk about the defense. Let's talk about the Bengals defense. The Bengals defense looked a lot better. Myles Murphy started showing some flashes. Evan, give me your thoughts on how you thought the Bengals defense performed on Sunday against the New England Patriots. Obviously, it was a loss. And what are your thoughts on the Bengals defense moving forward?
Thought they looked really good, especially the first couple possessions, right? You're forcing the interception. You're forcing a couple punts. Definitely not somewhere I think the Bengals offense or Bengals fans expected them to be sitting toward the end of the first quarter. Myles Murphy, couple good games back to back. That's a really good sign. Geno Stone, don't know what they said to him this week that was different than the last season and a half of play, but whatever they said, yeah, that's the magic combo of words. Keep that up, because he was actually playing hard and hitting hard and tackling hard. 10 total tackles by PFF charting. The linebackers between Barrett Carter and Demetrius Knight, 16 total tackles, 8 defensive stops. No missed tackles from Barrett Carter, according to the PFF charting, but Demetrius Knight did have 2 still. Barrett Carter was having some difficulties in coverage. 9 of 10 targets allowed to be 9 of the 10 targets thrown his way were allowed to be completed for 120 yards. So they were really making an effort to pick on him, but just encouraging to see some of the younger guys take a step forward, because so much of this has been DJ Turner, Trey Hendrickson, and please somebody, for the love of God, do something. Well, you got a little bit of something from a handful of players today. And I think that goes to show how much defense can be a unit based kind of system, more so than offense. You can kind of have 2 players and center things around them, focus them, find ways to create and get them open. You can get picked on anywhere on defense, and everything ties together, right? So if some people are out of position, it makes you have to compensate for that, and then you're out of position, and things just break down very quickly when one person can't do their job competently. And we've seen the we've seen what the Bengals have sown from the defensive investments or lack thereof over the season. So it's just encouraging to see, hey, you've got a couple players that are at least coming together to contribute now. Chris Jenkins, a couple pressures. Myles Murphy, we talked about. Joseph Ossai even looked pretty good. McKinley Jackson got in there for a few snaps and had a pressure. So very encouraging, especially in the sense that in the offseason, as you look ahead to next season, we've spent so much time going, okay, Trey Hendrickson, maybe DJ Turner and Dax Hill, but like what other places would you say are the foundations of your defense going forward? And if Trey wasn't going to be back, I think at the start of the season, it was fair with Dax and DJ Turner contracts coming up to say, I don't know for sure, like what the foundation of the defense might be going forward. But I think at this point, at least you can say, hey, if Trey's back, great. But you do have DJ Turner, who's looked great, that you'd probably want to bring back. Dax Hill has been pretty dang good too. And that money's got to go somewhere. But it is encouraging to see guys like Myles Murphy. You need to be able to get something out of these draft picks. So even if it is later than you probably would have liked, it's just an encouraging sign to see some of these younger guys at least take a step forward, and hopefully they can continue to do that down the back half of the season.
Yeah, I think in general too, I think everything just looked a little more in unison. Like everybody was just a little more fundamentally sound. Like Evan kind of touched already about some of the lower missed tackle rate. Like that's problem number one. If you just cut out that problem, your defensive problems get cut in half almost immediately because you're not letting big plays happen or those demoralizing plays happen. Just cutting down the number of missed tackles was a major addition in the end of that game against New England. And that's hopefully a thing that continues throughout the season. We all know they're capable of doing it. Like I've talked about, I think everybody knows how big of a fan I was of Barrett Carter in the pre-draft process. And this was never an issue for him. You know, playing in space was never an issue for him. Mm-hmm. Even in coverage, this stuff was never an issue for him. And so you'd like to think things are going to, I don't want to say regress to the mean because we haven't seen it yet, but just improve. They're going to improve with time as most things do. But I also just want to kind of touch on, I feel like Al Golden might have called his best game as a defensive coordinator too. Finally, you know, brought blitz a little bit more. Came off the edge from corners, the slot blitz with Jalen Davis. Like they just showed a little bit more of I feel like of what they can do without doing too much, without getting too fancy. I think they really just executed the fundamentals of football, and I think that goes a long way. And if that's really what it takes to be week in and week out, that defense that we saw on Sunday seemed like a repeatable pattern. Nobody dominated on the line of scrimmage, but everybody played all right. Myles Murphy played really good. The secondary, DJ Turner continued to play great. Obviously, Geno Stone had a great interception, but he played solid outside of that too. It wasn't just a splash plays this week that were like, okay, maybe that can turn the game around. It was a couple splash plays mixed in with average football play, which is all this team has needed. That is what we have said we needed time and time again. We don't need countless number of superstar and studs. We need average football with a couple guys that can make plays when we need it. And that's what happened Sunday. Yes, the Patriots still won. The Patriots are, 9-2 or whatever they are. And like, that's a good football team, an MVP candidate at quarterback, a decent head coach, a great offensive line that, in our benefit fell apart a little bit on Sunday. It definitely felt like a step in the right direction. Myles Murphy coming along, which is, another one of those things. It's just like, that's why you play your young guys. That's just why you do it. When you draft these developmental guys, you have to play them. And maybe that's why we saw the linebackers get thrusted into action so much earlier. But the development for the young guys, people taking steps, it just felt like everybody was sort of clicking. And I know that feels kind of weird to say this late in the season that things are just starting to click a little bit, but that's kind of how it felt on Sunday.
This is one of the games that really feels frustrating. It should be frustrating to every single Bengals fan watching this, because this is the type of game that can turn on a dime if you are a playoff contending team. If this was a game where the Bengals were closer to making the playoffs, and one of the reasons why I shout out the defense, and you guys did a great job of explaining it, was at the end of the game, the Patriots had 3 possessions. Every single one of those was not a touchdown. It was a field goal. And that is a win. And for me, when I look at last season with the Bengals, and when I look at a defense being, quote unquote, the worst defense in the league, I categorize that as at the end of the game, your offense does not get a chance to win the game. Yeah. And for as bad as this defense has been all season long, with 1 minute, 50 seconds left to go, the Bengals had the ball down 6, down 1 possession. Yep. And I look at that as a win. I look at that as the beginning of this season. it was trash. The Steelers game, it was you were going back and forth on offense. You had a chance to win the game, and that was a round of applause to your defense. And I thought the defense kind of fell apart a little bit towards the second half. I thought Drake May and this Patriots offense, they found their groove. They figured out this Bengals defense on third down. But at the end of the day, your offense had a chance to win the game. So going back to the question, did the defense turn a corner? I think they're finding their groove. And I still don't think this is a great defense, but this is kind of similar to what we saw with the Bengals last season. At the end of the season, albeit they played some bad offenses, they found their groove. And I think this is a bright spot for the Bengals. And it just sucks because them finding their groove, obviously we're going to talk about the Ravens game in the future of the season. I don't think it matters for this season. I think it's a little too gone and a little too late for this Bengals defense. So I thought it was a positive. And like I said, I think Myles Murphy is one that, while we were talking about DJ Turner and Dax Hill being kind of the only real building blocks on this defense, I think Myles Murphy may have a chance to be a quality starter moving forward. So I was happy to see him. And yeah, all around, I thought it was a very good showing for the Bengals defense. So
yeah, I thought the defense showed a lot of promise. I thought the defense gained a lot of confidence. Geno Stone, he breathed life into that Bengals team, the Bengals defense, getting a interception and then turning that into 6. These are things that you were hopeful for. These are things that you were hopeful that, the game will slow down for a lot of these guys, but especially him in year 2 in this Bengals defense. And we started to see that a little bit, but I definitely think this is a type of performance where the Bengals defense can start to build off of, and we can see, I guess we're going to find out very shortly tomorrow night how they're going to look against the Baltimore Ravens. Again, a divisional opponent, a foe that they know. You draft to sort of beat the teams in your division, right? And you think that this team is prepared. This team is prepared for this moment. The Bengals currently have 1 loss in the division, right, against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I've obviously splitting it with them. They still got 1 more matchup against the Cleveland Browns, and then they have 2 more matchups with the Ravens, one tomorrow night and another one down the season. So, all things considered, I have seen this Bengals brass, this Bengals team do some crazy things with Joe Burrow, especially down at the end of the season. Statistically, they always tend to catch fire at the later weeks of the year. If we're talking about a team that's going to push to win the AFC North, because that is currently still on the table, making the playoffs, right, from a wild card spot seems like that's something that's not in the fold. I think we got to just take it one game at a time before we can even talk about them running the table. They've got to just get one win under the belt. I will say, dare I say, is this the biggest game in the Zac Taylor era, outside of the Super Bowl, right? Because, they always say no game is as important as the next. But this is a game right here. When I look at it, I say, hey, if Zac Taylor and the Bengals lose this one, well, I think those hot seat talks just ratchet it up, because at that point, you're out of the playoffs. At that point, there is no hope to win the division. At that point, you're on the outside looking in. And then that's where you start to see the cracks in the foundation. That's where you try to keep this team afloat. That's where you try to get everybody to still believe in said vision, right? In said culture, right? So we'll see what that's going to look like. So let's talk about our next topic, right? We talked about the Bengals defense. I want to talk about Joe Burrow's return. But before I get to Joe Burrow's return, I want to talk about Joe Burrow's endorsement of the coaching staff. I thought that he had some interesting words regarding it. Obviously, the coaching staff has been under fire recently, namely Zac Taylor. Al Golden's even been under fire, but mostly Zac Taylor for good reason. And Joe Burrow had some interesting thoughts. Hey, Jimmy, play that clip for me.
Coaches, there's not a scheme in the NFL that is so revolutionary that it's going to completely change the way a player plays the game. Coaches work really hard and are smart, and they work a lot of hours to put players in position to make plays. And at the end of the day, you have to go make plays, and you have to play great within that system. So at the end of the day, players have to take some accountability and go and.
So I hate to push back on a guy who I consider the best quarterback in the National Football League. I hate to disagree, Because Malik, I have never suited up, right? Malik Wright has never suited up for an NFL game. Malik Wright has never thrown to opposing receivers outside of a pickup football game. These are things that have never happened. Matter of fact, the last time I played in a football game, Evan probably played in a football game. Is when Evan hurt his toe, right? That was years and years and years ago, and I was quarterback, and I wasn't too good. But what I'm about to say might be a hot take. I think Joe Burrow is blind. He only knows what he knows. And that statement he made, he said, there is no scheme, right, that can make a player play better. There is no play. At the end of the day, players got to play. And while I agree players do have to play, I got to push back on the scheme thing. I really do. I understand that every team, every football coach has a scheme that he implements, and obviously it's up to the players to make it work. You know, I feel like the Bengals scheme puts their offensive line in stressful situations, although the offensive line has looked better. I think that it relies on the receivers winning their one-on-one matchups. Things aren't always easy in the Bengals offense as easy as it could be. But again, Joe Burrow only knows what he knows. He's never been in a system in which you're running the offense from under center, right? You've never been in a system where you have an efficient running game consistently. You've never been in a system where you're able to marry the run game and pass game together and make it gel. So while I know it's hard, while I know it's hard for me to sit back up on this show, right, and push back on a Joe Burrow, I feel like Joe Burrow will probably be singing a different tune if he had maybe a different coaching staff since he entered the league. But this is all he's known since he got to the National Football League is Zac Taylor and company. That's all he's known. Yeah. So I think the statements that he made are a little bit half-sided. But I want to get Logan's thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think
being a coach,
I think, you know, I kind of can see the avenue Joe's coming from. Like, you don't really want to say it in a way where, you know, you think your coach could be scheming better or helping you out more or doing things. But I think I agree with a lot with what Malik said. Joe is as not simple as he is off the football field. He's a very simple man on the football field. He likes things in front of him. He doesn't like to do too much. He likes to sit there, look at the picture, and see it unfold. That's always kind of been what Joe's wanted to do. And that dates back even to the LSU days. Like, that's not just something that he came into the league and started doing and fell in love with. That's been his style of play for forever. And I think not that, you know, a more complex system would make Joe a better quarterback, but it might, you know what I mean? Like, it's when you don't know how something will really be, you can't really judge it too much. And when it comes to this whole scheme argument, again, it's tough because, you know, you watch Sean McVay, you watch Shanahan, and their schemes make people play pretty good. Yeah. You know, but at the end of the day, that's still like there's more that goes into it. There's the play calling aspect of it. There's the quarterback accuracy aspect of it that all matter. You know, maybe Joe's just like, maybe he means it as more of a, I don't care what the scheme is. I'm fine. Like, so in result, I believe everybody else will be fine. You know, like that's how he's taking it. I don't really know.
No, yeah. The difficult part I have with this is I can understand what he's saying from a scheme standpoint. And the reason why I say that is Joe can look at it and say, last year, the Bengals with me on the football field, we were number one. We were the best offense in the league. So no scheme is going to change up what I can do because I know what I did on the football field. I put up a top 3 season in total points for a team, so on and so forth, passing yards, whatever it was. I did that with him as head coach. Yeah. And I think that's where he is probably looking too short-sighted, or we are looking at it as a general statement as saying, hey, he's looking at Zac as an indictment of the entire coaching staff. And I think that's where it's wrong, because Zac Taylor, for example, I think while he may be leading a great offense, it doesn't mean he knows what he's doing in game management. When you look at other teams around the league, yes, just because you're putting up all these points doesn't mean at the end of the game we are going to pass the rock 4 straight times, or we are not going to bleed out the clock. And I think that's where the misconception is. And I like I said, I understand where he's coming from. Yeah. But I just don't think that we should look at this and say, just because Joe is happy with Zach Taylor and this coaching staff and how they're running their scheme does not mean there shouldn't be a change. Your football team is 3-8.
Yeah, I think with Joe too, this could be completely, I don't want to say wrong, maybe that's not his mindset, but sometimes it's like, I don't want to say success in these type of seasons we've had can be a bad thing because you don't get to, sit back and reevaluate things a bit. Like you said, like Joe has had success in this scheme, in this system, and he's led the league in passing yards, passing touch. He's been at the top of everything since he's entered the league in these things. Maybe like you said, maybe some of that's getting, I don't want to say getting in the way of it, because I'd like to think Joe knows things can be better. We see it every week. We talk about, the simplicity of things for him and needing it. But it's also just that scheme could just be those 5 to 10 plays a game where it just makes it really easy. He doesn't have to think. That's where I think the issue with the comments come from me, because scheme doesn't matter until it matters. And I think that's the biggest issue. And Joe likes to think that he can overcome that, and he can, but it's still, we don't need you to do it every time. Sometimes it's nice for that scheme to work on its own as well, and not just be like, hey, here's a play, I'm gonna let you do your thing, Joe, from the start of the game to the end of the game. It's that unison with the coach, whether it's marrying the run, the pass game, calling a play action, calling a screen, calling double crossers, and just knowing when their defense is going to play certain, coverage. There's so many things that go into it where the scheme does matter. And I think, I don't want to say, because we don't really know exactly what he means, but Joe needs to let the scheme help him instead of him helping the scheme sometimes.
Yeah.
I think to put it like as simply as I can, like Whitworth and many have said, like the Bengals scheme inherently puts a lot of strain and stress on the offensive linemen to do a lot versus a Shanahan scheme that does a lot of play action, quick drops, et cetera, right? So if there's inherently different schemes that put players in more stressed positions, then yes, there are just objectively better schemes for certain players or certain schemes that are going to highlight your abilities better than others, right? Think about any receiving tight end going into the Mike McDaniel Shanahan. If you can't block, it's not going to matter. You're not going to be able to be highlighted properly in that scheme. So like, I understand where he's coming from the personal element of like, I don't want the idea to be like, oh, I think there's things that can be improved. I understand him being like, hey, my statement is that the scheme is good enough that I don't think scheme matters as much as people think.
Yeah.
But to say it doesn't matter, it's just like inherently, guys, like we know like that. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to plug in Nick Mullins and Brock Purdy and Mac Jones and et cetera into every Shanahan offense, or take Baker Mayfield and take him from the Browns and put him on the Rams or on the Bucks, and suddenly, wow, he does look like a really good quarterback. Or you take Emmanuel Forbes, speaking of another Ram, like from a cast-off guy who gets brought back. So like we can say that, oh, scheme doesn't matter, but if every offensive lineman that walks into a Shanahan scheme suddenly improves all his numbers, well, like I think we have evidence there that like, yeah, that absolutely can be a thing. Like if you're Jarvis Landry and we're talking about receptions being an indicator of how good of a receiver you are, then damn straight that scheme makes you look good. So like, again, I understand where he's coming from. I don't think he means it literally. Joe Burrow is a very, very intelligent man and knows a lot about football and has a very high football IQ. I think he knows that that's not as black and white of a statement as like he kind of made it out to be. I think he's really just trying to, now that he's stepped back into the media space, you see this as like he retreats because he doesn't want the team or the conversation to be about him while he's not on the field. But I think this is him coming right back into a situation that is tumultuous, that is just explosive and incendiary right now. And he is trying to be like, okay, no one has stepped up to be the leader that needed to be for this team right now. I'm going to be that guy. All right. I'm healthy. I'm fine. I don't care. I'm playing, period. Next question. All right. Oh, scheme, offense. I don't care. I can make it happen. Next question. Like, I think this is the leader of the locker room trying to squash the narratives that have grown out of control while he's been off the field and out of the limelight. While these have been allowed to run rampant and no one's curtailed them, right? Because Zach Taylor going on to every post-game presser in the last 5 or 6 weeks and just going,
Jesus.
next week we're going to try harder. And like that made things worse, right? I really think this is Joe Burrow saying, hey, all right, I'm going to get in front of all this right now. I'm going to shut this shit down, and then we can all move on with our lives week on week based on what's actually happening on the football field.
I think that was so beautifully put by you. We got an interesting question from Jacqueline Hyde, 91, huge fan of the show, always in here. Says, is situational play calling connected? I want to make sure I get this correctly. Is situational play calling connected to scheme? Logan, let's get your thoughts on that.
It's I want to say yes and no. I know that's kind of like the cop out, but obviously I'll explain it a bit, because at the end of the day, Zach can call whatever the hell he wants. That's his play calling decision. That's what he thinks. But the scheme is dictating what plays you have access to in these moments, what plays you trust to be ran in these moments, what plays you have set up to be ran in these moments. Like that goes into a massive part of play calling in general, is your scheme and what have you set up, what have you worked on out of this formation that you've just consistently have ran that we can show a different look on. Or it's a massive piece to the play calling puzzle, but it's not, obviously Zach can call whatever he wants, no matter how it comes in. I would say kind of yes, it is, but like Zach still can outrule anything. He can go with the scheme, he can go away from the scheme. He can, like I said, he can go run. Like it doesn't help him to set up a run or pass maybe better. Maybe he's struggling in there, but like it helps the play calling thing. But again, at the end of the day, Zach has to call the right things that fit within the scheme. And so it's one of those, it's like yes, but also no, because Zach's still gonna have the last say no matter what.
The number one point I look at when we talk about this question, I don't exactly know if it's fully connected, but I look at one specific thing, and Andy Reid even said this when he looked at Mahomes and their offense, and the same thing with the Flacco offense with the Bengals so far. A lot of it is if they're calling out, like whether it's an RPO or they call out 2 plays. And this is where I feel like a lot of fans get it mixed up when we see a run call. And I'll look at one specifically, I forgot what game it was, but when they ran the Ja'Marr Chase pass to the left side and he dropped the ball, it was in the 4th quarter. I think it was against the Bears, and that was a first down. And it was like, why are we passing the ball at first down? But that play was, in reality, it was up to Joe Flacco to say, hey, I can either hand it off or I can get out to my guy, Ja'Marr Chase. And I think that is tied directly to the scheme that the Bengals have been running. A lot of times it's, hey, you're getting a chance where I only got 5 offensive linemen. I got my guys out wide, and I got Ja'Marr Chase one-on-one, or I can hand it off. And I think that's where Andy Reid even said it, where, hey, he took it upon himself. Maybe I need to call more direct run plays, because that basically tells your quarterback, hey, you can't check out of this. We are running the damn ball. So I think that's one of the reasons why this scheme at times we could say, hey, you should be running the ball when you are up by 7. So that's just something I found interesting when looking at why the Bengals either pass the ball at certain times or run it. I think it can be connected to the scheme.
I think when I'm kind of considering, like, is it connected? Yes, but I think, as opposed to like 2 separate ideas, that scheme is your entire piece of the pie, right? Scheme is, these are the plays that we have within our offense that fit. And not all of those plays necessarily fit together, right? Like, you don't want to just go and run a whole bunch of gun and then spam like a play action without having your setup under center play. Like, you're not just going to go out there and then roll something out there that doesn't have a setup, right? So there's ways those are kind of linked and tied together a little bit. But I think situational play calling narrows the scope of what you're looking at from your pie, right? So if you have all of these plays in your arsenal, and every play was 1st and 10, you might call differently than you would, hey, okay, now we're at 3rd and 1. Now we're at 4th and inches. Now we're at 3rd and 7 or 3rd and 4. That's going to narrow what part of your scheme that you look at. So I think they're connected in that way, in the sense that scheme is kind of the all-encompassing idea of your offensive identity, whereas situational play calling is more, hey, where do I focus on my entire pie that I have to choose from here? And that's influenced by the situation, right? Which is, hey, it's first down and we've been running the ball great. Maybe we can take a play action shot here. Or whether that's, hey, this is 3rd and 1. As much as I really wanted to dial up like this shot, or I wanted to hit this play and I just set it up, I need to make sure that we can just get 2 to 4 yards here, right? Like, let me just get that play that, is a mesh spot kind of thing where it's just like, hey, we got a lot of underneath options, zone man, boom, hit the check down, Joe Burrow's smart, on to the next one, right? And then we can run that. I don't think inherently that we see things like this past week. Zach Taylor inherently had some plays that were well designed. It's always come down to the situational part where you see the 4th and 1, right? Where he's trying so damn hard to get them to jump off sides for the second time that game. That's the part where it's like, dude, again, you built the entire offense. Like, this is it. Like, this is your whole thing. Like, it's supposed to be offense. We're in year 7 of this. Like, and constantly in those moments, in those situational moments, it's the end of the game. Hey, I'm so worried about running the ball and keeping the clock, and we got to run because that's what you do here. Well, if you get the first down, you win the game, period. So don't just limit yourself to 1st and 10, run, 2nd and 10, run, 3rd and 8 or 3rd and 9, run. Like, you get the first down, you win the game. You don't have to worry about run, and then punt the ball to the other team. Yeah. Like, that's the part where I don't think the scheme is necessarily inherently bad all the time. But when you get to the situational play calling in terms of down and distance, how much time is left in the game? Yeah. How far are you behind the other team? Because if you're down 10, what the fuck are you punting for when it's the 4th quarter, right? Yep. You need to go score. You don't get 2. Oh, yeah, well, our defense is just going to get 2 stops where they hold them to no points. Like, what? Like, that's where the situational element comes in. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. It's hard to be a head coach and analyze all of that and keep in mind everything that's happening with the situations in the game, for down and distance, for time, for win probability, for whether or not we'll go for it. If it's 4th and 3 or more, we'll punt it. But if it's 4th and 2 or less, we'll go for it. And let me think about these plays. Like, that's the difficulty of being the offensive coordinator and the coach at the same time. Right. And again, I will say there are these are the best guys at doing this in the entire world. And I'll still say, out of the 32 NFL coaches, maybe there's 2 or 3 at one time that should be play caller and coach for offense and defense at one time, because it's just so hard to do. It is hard to be the best at both jobs at the same time. That's really freaking hard. Yeah. So I at least want to end it on that note of, like, I don't want to be hypercritical in the sense of, like, I'm expecting more of that, but, like, you also need to have the humility to relinquish when you start to feel that slip away, when you start to feel that grip on, I'm not making the best decisions. I'm not considering everything well enough or consistently enough. I get it right 60% of the time, not 80% of the time. Okay. Well, then you need to start relieving some of these duties to other people to help you get that right more of the time, because you can't keep having the delay of games that put you in bad spots. We're at home. Why are we getting false starts and delay of games at home? What's happening here? How hard is it for us to get the play call in? Why is this still a problem years later? Like, it's that fight and shooting yourself in the foot constantly.
And you hear him sometimes in the press conference. I remember after one of the games where he said, well, we knew it was going to be loud out there. And I'm like, dude, it's a home game. Like, why? Like, that brings up a whole different conversation. But I'm happy that that's what the conversation is starting to be centered around, because I think for years I always talked about the situational coaching. I always talk about the situational game management. And situational coaching is always what makes or breaks guys in the National Football League. Make no mistake about it. All these guys can coach, right? But what makes or breaks guys is how you handle the pressures, right? I think sometimes that when you watch a Bengals game, and I thought you guys said this all so beautifully. So I appreciate you guys for giving your opinions on this. And Cheesy Rider, we'll get to your question as well. I think sometimes the ebbs and flows of a game kind of get to Zach Taylor. I think sometimes you look out there and you're like, we got T. Higgins, we got Jamar Chase, or we have whoever. You trust in your receivers so much, you trust in your pass game so much that it's hard to take the ball out of a quarterback's hands when you know you have those alpha males out there. And I think that's why you see this Bengals team so hard pressed to commit to the run game. And I think this is a good segue to Cheesy Rider's question. But I think my issues with Zach always seem to be, it always does seem to be this situational coaching. It feels like the menu is huge, right?
Mhm.
And then when it gets down to a critical time in the game, whether it's a 4th and 1, 3rd and 1, it's like, oh, what do I call? What do I call? What do I call? Because
It's like when the waiter at Cheesecake Factory
Yeah.
catches you off guard and you're
Yeah.
still talking and you haven't looked at the menu and
Yes.
they're like, you're ready to order. And you're like, oh my
Yeah.
God, wait, there's 40
Yeah.
pages here and I don't know what to call. I'll take this.
Yeah.
I'm not feeling great about that.
so when we talk about play calling and stuff like that, we're not talking about the actual plays being like the playbook, the scheme being bad. We're talking about when certain plays are being called, or it just feels like there's a panic or a little bit of unrest before that call gets in. You know, a lot of the great play callers like an Andy Reid, I'm sure they have sections in their playbook in which certain plays are for third and third and short situations. Well, you have to commit to that, right? You have to commit to that third and short part of the offensive playbook. That's where you as a coach tell your quarterback, I don't care how good he is, how great he is. You say, listen, these are the plays that you have. These are the plays we're running with. And this is what I expect you to like. This is the play that I'm calling. I'm giving you 1 or 2 plays. This is what you run with, right? Depending on what the look looks like. I think that simplifying it in that way could help this Bengals team in so many different ways. But it's clear to me, and I thought Daniel Barber was such a great point. It's clear to me right now that maybe they have a coach that I don't want to say is in over his head because I feel like it's kind of disrespectful, but I do feel like in over his head is the right thing to say in a lot of ways. It does feel like sometimes the moment might be too big for him. And no doubt, do I think Zach Taylor could be a good coach if he gives up play call? Yeah, man, 100%. Right? You know, I do think if he were to give up play calling and he was allowed to focus on the game in totality, because he is the head coach of this football team, not the offensive play calling, but it also makes me wonder how much, right? Because think about it. If the Bengals results were still this right now, guys, and let's say Dan Pitcher was the offensive play caller, how much would Zach Taylor actually have to hang his hat on right now? What would the conversation be? As long as you're holding that prolific offense that hasn't looked prolific recently in your palm of your hands, you could always say the team might be struggling, but hey, look how good the offense is playing. And I'm the guy calling offensive plays. If Zach Taylor gives up those play calling duties, if he were to ever, and the team were to still struggle, well, what do you have to hang the hat on? Right? Is that fair? Or am I saying that?
Absolutely.
And I think that's maybe part of why giving up play calling duties is such a hard topic for him, because it's almost feels like a guy that knows he's not in over his head, but also is blessed to be in the spot that he's in and is afraid of someone else getting credit for the offense looking as good, and to the point where at some point it might be, maybe we don't need that guy. Maybe you're not that good of a coach, right? Maybe because that's when those conversations start. We've seen it before. We saw it with Dan Campbell and the Lions when Ben Johnson was there. People were saying, Lions, just extend Ben Johnson. Keep Ben Johnson in-house. But I think that's where you have to be secure in who you are as a coach, as a play caller, to be like, well, I got here, right, because of how I relate to players. I got here because I am a player's coach. I got here because I can maximize the uses of a roster. You got to realize you're the head man. It's not like Game of Thrones where you kill the king and you become the king. That's not how this works. You have people who are under you, have people who are offensive play callers that are hoping to one day have those positions, right? Such as head coach. And you should put them in a position, unless you're an Andy Reid or you've proven yourself, or Sean McVay, like you should put those guys in positions to where they can showcase that. And you should feel secure enough, especially Cincinnati of all places, right? Marvin Lewis didn't call defensive plays for Cincinnati until he absolutely had to in his final year. You should 100% be like, all right, this is your show, Dan. Let's see what you got, right? And then I focus on the game management aspect of it. The reason why Zach Taylor catches so much hell is because the team's not doing well, right? And, well, he's also the offensive play caller, so every single play call that's a misplay call or a miscue, it gets scrutinized because the magnifying glass is so huge. And it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way. And no one will think of any less of you if you were to say, hey, I'm good on calling. I'm good on, I'm good on calling plays or whatever the case may be. I think that's sort of where it goes to. But to answer Cheesy Rider's question, he says, am I the only one who thinks Zach's outright refusal to run the ball more when it was working cost us this last game? I do. Again, the best way I could put this. Have you guys ever played Madden? Right? I mean, like since Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and since we had all the weapons.
Yeah.
There are times like that's my stress reliever. I don't smoke, I don't drink. I sit and I'll play Madden. That's what I'll do. Right? When I'm not running business, when I'm doing this, that's what I do. And I'll tell you right now, me and Daniel will be watching, and Daniel, God is my witness. I'll have a 3rd and 3 situation, and I'll just air it out to Jamar Chase. I'll air it out, huh?
You launching that big.
And I'm launching it. Why? Because you have so much faith in that guy in one-on-one situation. I've only got to think from a coach's perspective, even though it's not Madden, that's probably what it's like. It's like, yo, I have so much faith in Joe Burrow. I have so much faith in Joe Flacco's arm and his ability to get it to those guys that fuck it, I'm calling this play. I know that we should be dealing with the menu that's this small. I know we should be dealing with the breakfast menu, right? But man, do I want to deal with the dinner menu right now. When the breakfast menu can get you what you need. Sometimes you're like, oh, I want to go for it all. And I think sometimes that's why they find themselves in these unfortunate situations, I'll say. I know I've given a lot of analogies there, and I probably took a lot of twists and turns there, but I want to ask you guys this. What do you guys expect in Joe Burrow's return? Because no doubt the return gives a morale boost. No doubt people are excited about it. But I want to talk about, what do you guys fully expect in this return? Daniel, let's start with you.
I expect to see honestly a good offensive performance. This is just fun, and this is what sucks about it, is because I'm not even thinking playoffs. I'm just looking to see Joe Burrow out there. I expect the offense probably look a little bit rusty, and I think that's the biggest question mark I have, right? Is Joe Burrow always tends to, whether it's season opener, year after year after year, kind of starts slow. And I do think that there's a chance that this game looks a little bit rough, but at the end of the day, I think that this Bengals team, I think they found something in this rushing attack. And I think that Joe Burrow also has had time to sit and watch Joe Flacco and watch this offense perform pretty well over the course of the past couple of weeks, and say, hey, that's what they've been doing. That's what's been working. And I can come in and I've got some easy buttons that work. You got Jamar Chase back. And I think that this offense, while Burrow may look a little bit rusty, I do think that this offense should look fine. And I really don't think that there's a world where this isn't a close game. And I think that there's a good chance the Bengals could pull out a win in this. This is a 7-point spread, so the Bengals are obviously underdogs. But the Bengals always play close games. So what I expect is I expect Joe Burrow to look halfway decent, and I expect Jamar Chase to have a big target share. I expect Chase Brown to be a major focal point at the beginning of this game. And outside of that, see where the chips fall, to be honest with you. But I'm looking forward to seeing Joe Burrow out there. I think it's going to give this team an energy boost, whether that's, just from the team knowing Joe Burrow and his energy. I think that's something that change is always a good thing when it comes to mid-season. At least this first jolt, people are going to feel this. The team is going to feel this, and I feel like we are going to be able to see that through the TV. So, I don't know how many points they're going to put up, but I think that Burrow is he's going to be able to find his rhythm, and I think we're going to be watching a close game. And I'll save my prediction for a little bit, but
yeah, I think, I'm pretty conflicted. I expect it to at least be how it's been since Joe Flacco, but just to the level of which versions of that do we get. We all know Joe has been a little rusty when he starts the season. Yes. But I think it's just really going to come down to how he handles the blitzing and the pressure that the Ravens are going to get. He's been great against that his whole career. We know how smart he is mentally. We know how his superpower is his escapability. Well, are those two things going to be there this week after missing so much time? And then physically, is he going to be able to do all those things that he's done in his past? Because that's what makes Joe Burrow Joe Burrow. So that's that part for me that I'm worried to see, where he's going to be at. Maybe it'll be perfectly fine. Maybe he'll make up for it in another area. Whatever it is, that's the big area where it's really, like going to determine how effective he is in that regard. But then again, it's Ja'Marr Chase has absolutely dominated the Ravens throughout his career. If you're the Baltimore Ravens, I don't know how you walk into this game and not use every resource you have in making sure he does not beat you. I just don't understand how that's not priority number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Like I'm gonna let Yoshi beat me. I'm gonna let Mitchell Tinsley beat me. I'm gonna let Mike Gesicki beat me. And if they beat me, they beat me. But you know who's not gonna beat me? Ja'Marr Chase. So, and when we know how much Joe's comfortability is with Ja'Marr, now he's coming back. Is he gonna look there too early, too often, and be a little whatever it is? With Joe being back, wanting to throw to Ja'Marr, with the Ravens should be taking Ja'Marr away completely. Just how's it going to look? Is he going to find that comfortability with Mike Gesicki, who could have a huge game, or Yoshi or Chase Brown, whatever it is?
Noah Fant.
There's so many levels to where he could go, and I trust Joe Burrow. I'm so excited to watch him play. I'm so excited to see how the offense looks. I'm really excited to see, but there's a lot that could happen on tomorrow night.
Yeah, I don't want to expect too much. Right. I just want to be happy to be, hey, Thanksgiving, watching Burrow play football. All right, cool. Obviously there's a lot that is not going to be fixed by Joe Burrow coming back, but it at least is going to make Bengals football a lot more enjoyable and a lot more exciting to watch. It's going to be interesting. Like you said, Ja'Marr Chase has historically been very good against the Ravens. The secondary for them has not necessarily been very, very good this year. Kyle Hamilton coming back, being healthy. Cheeto Awuzie, surprising, has actually been pretty decent for them. But Marlon Humphrey and Nate Wiggins are having some really rough years on the other end of that. So we'll see if the double team is enough to take away Ja'Marr Chase and kind of slow him down. I think Joe Burrow's superpower is kind of some of the – Joe Flacco is great at finding a lot of those receivers, but you notice the accuracy is not – accuracy not in terms of completing a pass or getting it to where it needs to be, but in terms of where the placement is on the frame. Whether that's leaving a guy high and in front when the defender's crashing down to make the tackle, whereas Joe Burrow would put it behind them to allow them to get the ball down and then not get hit or protect the ball from being caught. The back shoulder throws, we see that T. Higgins catches away from his body to where Joe puts it in the perfect place where it just hits his hands and the defender can't even reach around T far enough to get that to break that pass up. That's Joe Burrow's superpower, and guys who don't always separate like Yoshivas, but do have that bigger frame can benefit from that immensely. Yeah. So I expect Joe Burrow to come back and be that point guard of the offense again. Really. I don't expect him to lock in on Ja'Marr Chase for 12 to 15 targets. I think you're going to see, with T. Higgins being out and Mike Gesicki being back another week, I think you're going to see a big game from him kind of filling in as a lot of that pseudo wide receiver 2-3 role. I think after last season, kind of reading the tea leaves of what that meant, like it was Ja'Marr and T were wide receiver 2 and 3, and everybody thought it was going to be Yoshivas, but it ended up being Mike Gesicki by the end of the year, where they were like, hey, this is our best 3 receivers, quote unquote. And as much as I enjoy Yoshivas and am happy for the turnaround he's had the last couple weeks, I still think that Mike Gesicki is your better receiving option there. So it's going to be interesting. I do think you're going to see one of those games where 5 players catch 3 passes from Joe Burrow this game.
Well, here's the crazy thing no one's really talking about, guys. And hopefully you guys are enjoying the show. If you guys do us a favor, give this video a like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We appreciate you guys spending your Thanksgiving Eve with us. Here's the thing people aren't talking about. The offensive line quietly has settled. This is a better offensive line than the one Joe Burrow debuted this season against, right? The guard spot, dare I say, looks improved. Dalton Reisner has provided a bit of stability at the right guard spot for the Bengals. He's quietly, well, it was a soft benching for Jalen Rivers and that no one talked about. Dalton Risner gets back in there. Dalton Risner completely just calms the storm there, especially in pass pro. And you actually even heard him being mentioned a couple of times getting to the second level by the NFL announcers. And I remember earlier this offseason, guys, when I talked about it, I said, Dalton Risner is the perfect Bengals guard fit, right? Because he's a guy that is probably going to look for an extension at around $2-3 million, right around that range the Bengals want to play. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think if you guys remember my first show after the Bengals signed him, I said, I think the Bengals figured out softly their guard spot for the next 2 years where they don't have to worry about that position. And you think about it, Joe Flacco was the statue at the quarterback spot outside that one game. But they provided stability for him. Now, Orlando Brown is still a concern. Luckily for the Bengals, the Ravens' edges aren't destroying tackles this year. They're not doing that. The Ravens have struggled to get the consistent pass rush going. And I feel like, Evan talked about it, the ability to be a point guard out there and distribute the ball and get it to the right targets, but also understanding where your outlets are. And I feel like with Joe Flacco not knowing the offense fully and still trying to grasp things, I felt like sometimes he threw the ball where it shouldn't have been when there were easier outlets. There were so many times we saw Mike Gesicki or Noah Fant or Chase Brown. Some of these guys open in the flat and the decision was just made just a hair too soon. Joe Burrow's mental is still there, right? Joe Burrow's arm is still there. It's not like he hurt his arm. It's not like he hurt his, it's not like it's not like he's been out, so to speak. He understands the offense just spinning the toe. So you would think that the mental reps are something that could be beneficial for him. I look at guys like Mitchell Tinsley, right, that could potentially show up in this game in spots. I do believe,
how many more touchdowns he got to catch?
Yeah.
His touchdown percentage like what, 60% right now?
His touchdowns have been phenomenal.
I'll say that I know they're different receivers. I feel like Mitchell Tinsley is a better option at this point than Andre Oshibas.
Yes.
And I feel like he's earned that opportunity.
Well, and not to, because I know you better keep going on there. I think like this is the ideal situation for him because he's kind of been their prototype of, hey, he's slotting in behind T. So no T Higgins. Like this is an ideal spot. And I hate to say it because he should have been getting Yoshi snaps. But all I know is he is going to be, and he better be out there on the field. And if they put in like the packages of Gesicki in the slot, Jamar, and they replace T with Yoshi, that's going to piss me off because there is no way you should have Yoshi in there, especially as the outside boundary receiver over Mitchell Tinsley at this point. And that's where I fall. And like you said, this guy is legit. Like I think that especially with the role that T Higgins played, especially with T Higgins being out, this is the perfect matchup. And I'm just going to be very frustrated watching this game if they have Gesicki in that slot role and they plug in Yoshi on the outside and they don't have Tinsley there, because I think that it is doing their team a massive, massive disservice.
Guys, I really feel like Noah Fant's in for a big game. Noah Fant and Joe Burrow were developing chemistry before Joe Burrow went out. Joe Burrow obviously threw him a touchdown pass in that Cleveland Browns game. He was getting, I think he had like 4 targets the second week. He's a guy that's starting to get it. He's a guy that's starting to put it together. And I feel just like how Eric All was that for the Bengals last year, I think that Noah Fant's going to slot right in. And I think that when you do have a game where T Higgins is going to be out and it's going to be a massive loss, obviously you got Mike Gesicki. He's going to be the guy that stretch the field for you and eat up the middle of the field. I feel like Noah Fant's going to be that guy you forget about. I feel like Noah Fant's going to be that guy that you forget about, the check downs, right? The out routes, the little dig routes. I think those are things that Noah Fant is going to be able to eat on. And I for those that bet out there, I definitely think a Noah Fant touchdown is definitely on the board. I know it's been a couple of weeks since I've talked about that. But I want to bring up something to y'all, and I want to get you guys' opinion on this before we even talk about, do we think that there's any way that Zac Taylor saves his job? Like obviously, y'all know where I stand with the situation based on things that I was told at the end of last year, the beginning of this year when things went haywire, especially after the second loss with Browning. But I want to get you guys' opinion on it because I definitely think that the difference of opinions are important. I don't really hear Evan. I don't really hear Logan. I really don't hear you all talk too much about it, but I really want to get you guys' honest opinion. Do you guys think with a loss against the Baltimore Ravens, Zach Taylor will be back next year?
No, I think I'm glad you emphasized with a loss to the Ravens this week. I think there's a world if you win this first game with Joe Burrow coming back, momentum is going to feel good for the Bengals for once. I don't necessarily think that means he's going to be like, this is the game that decides his job or whatever. But I think if there's any hope for him keeping it, it starts with a win in primetime with your quarterback coming back, with Ja'Marr coming back, and just things picking up. That doesn't mean it'll happen regardless. But I think with a loss to the Baltimore Ravens in primetime again, it's you lose kind of that the morale boost of Joe Burrow coming back a little bit. That doesn't mean things are just gonna completely go to shit now all of a sudden. But still, I think you're gonna put yourself at what, you'd be 3-9 or whatever, whatever. Like, it's just not great. It's just not great. And then you got to play the Bills next week. And yes, we have the Bills number. We've played the Bills well. They're still a good football team. And then you play the Ravens again. It's like things can just get ugly quick. That doesn't mean we're gonna get killed. That doesn't mean we're gonna play like crap. But you still have to win a football game. It doesn't matter if you lose by 1 point. A loss is a loss, and it's very easy to see the losses continue to stack without a win tomorrow night.
I don't think it's like the sole determining factor, because there's a lot that's gotten you here, right?
Yeah.
Obviously this is what, 7th season now. And I feel like he doesn't get as much leeway from the Joe Burrow injury and kind of what's happened this season. 1, because of the Joe Flacco trade.
Yes. That's why they did it, by the way.
2, I would say because you still have to play the Ravens twice and then the Browns. And if you drop both games to the Steelers and drop both games to the Ravens, especially when you come back and you have Joe Burrow, how am I supposed to feel better about where you're going to take this team? Because you're still struggling to put together consecutive good games as a play caller or offensive designer in year 7 of being the offensive head coach coordinator combo, right? Okay, well, at least you can hold the team together. That's what, well, we'll see about that. Because there's definitely some frustrations there.
Yeah.
But that's where I come to is, hey, you don't get this leeway of like the Joe Burrow injury because they've made the trade. You've got Joe Burrow. You have this stretch down here where you have to play 3 more division games. And if you don't look like the person who can deliver, like what more? What's the next reason that we should believe that, oh, just next year, like they just need this one tweak and suddenly they'll have it figured out.
Yeah.
Like that's you're not the Chiefs when they were like, oh, we just need, 𝗕𝗏𝗃 West, or not 𝗕𝗏𝗃 West. Who's the Clyde, or help me out here. Was it Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the LSU running back for yeah. It's like, oh yeah, if they just get a running back, here we go. Like, this is it. Like, it's you're not the proverbial running back away, right? Like, you're not like, oh man, Zach Taylor is this young, hungry play caller who's figuring it out, and we're going into year 3, and like, if he can just get a little more consistent, like, no, we're in year 7. Like, this is who you are as a coach now. If you haven't figured out in year 7 already how to delegate properly so that you're not having procedural issues like constant delay of game penalties in year 7, then what makes me think that's going to get better in year 8, year 9? And that's what I just keep coming back to is, hey, like, how many of these slow starts can we blame on individual guys of like, well, this guy was late to camp, and well, this was a bit of it. All the other teams are dealing with that too. All the other teams are dealing with injuries and distractions and everything else, right? So like, again, man, it's just like years of consistency of the same issues. Like, why is tackling always an issue? Why is playing tough always an issue? Why is being consistent always an issue? Why is play calling just gelling together? Why are setting up plays and good designs an issue? Why is there 1 week against Baltimore you go for every 4th down and then you just wasted all of your 4th down going force for the next 16 games? Like,
this feels like the 2018 season to me. This has a very weird, we've had some really bad losses in prime spots this year where people were watching the Broncos game, right? We've had some, I'm talking about some non-competitive games this past year. And I feel, again, I watch Zach Taylor, and usually he's a guy that has all the answers. He doesn't seem like a guy that has answers recently. He seems a guy that's out of solutions. It seems like he doesn't really know. And to your point, how do you galvanize the fan base? How do you get people to believe that, hey, I can turn this thing around the following year?
What's that next step? Like,
Yeah.
what does he do? What does he get better at? That it's just like he's
Yeah.
going to do this better,
Yeah.
and that's going to fix it.
It
Like,
feels to me like obviously you're hopeful. They can't afford another loss. Let's just call it what it is.
No.
How likely is that, right? You're asking Joe Burrow to come on, put on a cape, have no ring rust, and come back in and go crazy on the gauntlet. Like
Even if you just say the offense
Yeah.
gets it perfect, here we go.
What
Like
about the defense?
the defense. That's the thing. You tell me the defense can't mess up one
Right.
game. Like that's the tough sell.
You're facing a Cleveland Browns team because Harbaugh's still fighting for his future. I believe that. But you're facing a Cleveland Browns team. I'm not worried about a Shedeur Sanders, but that is a team that's rejuvenized. They believe in that guy. As crazy as that is, all the kids throwing up the wrist and all that crazy stuff. Like, that's not just an easy, because they're probably going to be still fighting for morale at the end of the season. And Kevin Stefanski's going to be trying to keep his job. There's just a lot that goes on in my head. But the one thing I keep coming back to, I just feel like this Bengals team might be auditioning for who the next head coach is going to be, putting good stuff on tape for the next future head coach of this team. And because think about it, if you're a coach looking to get the call to be, to become the head coach of the Bengals, right? You want to know first and foremost, okay, how healthy is Joe Burrow? How does the thing look with Joe Burrow back in the lineup? And if this thing looks sustainable, well, for you, it's like, all right, I can see what I could work with something. There are some things that I could work on. I just don't know if they're going to hitch their wagon to Zach Taylor. Zach, let me be very clear. Even if the Bengals get absolutely blown out tomorrow, which I don't think is going to happen, I don't envision a world in which Zach Taylor does not finish out the season. I think Zach Taylor is going to be given the opportunity to complete the season. I think there's a lot of respect for the job that he did, right, in turning things around and getting them the Super Bowl and all this yada, yada, yada. That being said, I think that what Bengals fans should look forward to, and I think what the Bengals are looking forward to, is putting good film on tape. Because if you're not auditioning for this team this year, you're auditioning for a team next year. I think there's a lot that goes into that. And I feel like last year you had the situation in which, okay, well, the defense wasn't playing well. You got rid of the coordinator. It always follows this way, guys. We talked about at the beginning of the year. You fire a coordinator, and typically what happens, the coach goes after that, right? You typically fire the coordinator to save yourself.
Yep.
To be like, okay, that's we got rid of 5 coordinators. We got rid of some position coaches. This is going to be the thing that turns this thing around. And when it doesn't turn around, remember the Bengals brought in an offensive line coach, Scott Peters from the Patriots. They brought a new defensive coordinator from Notre Dame. They made a lot of changes, alterations to this coaching staff with the hopes that this would turn stuff around, and it hasn't been turned around, right? And as much as it sucks for Al Golden, a guy that was being praised as one of the best defensive coordinators in college football, and even though he left Notre Dame to come to Cincinnati, it's an unfortunate spot, but he's probably looking at the situation, he'd probably be out, right? You're thinking about a new staff coming in completely. Who would the Bengals keep potentially? Who are some of the guys that are on this Bengals staff that the Bengals would want to keep long-term, right? Would Dan Pitcher survive, or would Dan Pitcher be like, hey, I've been with the Bengals my entire NFL career. Maybe I would want to go somewhere else. So there's a lot of things that we're looking at, but I don't get the notion that Zach Taylor, I think Zach Taylor's pulling out all the stuff. I think this is his Hail Mary. I think that this is his one punch that he goes to for a knockout blow. But it's asking a lot. And that all things being considered when talking about this, I feel as if this team is just auditioning for what the next head coach might look like. And who that person might be, I have no idea. Who could make sense? We've talked about it at length on this show before. But that brings me to my next topic from you, for you boys. Do you guys think that the Bengals beat the Ravens tomorrow? Logan, let's start with you.
Oh, man. As much as I hate saying it, I don't think so. I think that's just – there's a lot going on. Like, it's a lot of what I said earlier, too. We know Joe's going to be better, but he's still going to be a little rusty. We know, like, if anybody with a right mind, they should be triple, quadruple teaming Ja'Marr Chase and letting everybody else beat you. Like, it's so much. The avenue for the Ravens to have success in this game is so much easier than the Bengals. And, that's on a number of fronts. Obviously, Joe Burrow coming back is a major, 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 major plus. Same thing with with Ja'Marr, but now T's out. The line has been better. But how are they going to handle some of the speed that Baltimore presents? And at the end of the day, the Bengals' biggest issue all year has been the defense and the tackling issues specifically. Now you're facing one of the most elusive quarterbacks ever. Zay Flowers, extremely elusive guy with the ball in his hands. Derrick Henry, one of the hardest guys to tackle. It's the path for those things to rear its ugly head is so obviously staring right at you in the face. And I know Lamar hasn't been running around this year like too much. Zay Flowers hasn't been some amazing guy, but we know what they're capable of. We know Derrick Henry. We've played Derrick Henry well for whatever reason. But again, this is a different team. This is a different unit. We have to tackle players that are significantly better than the players we couldn't tackle in weeks prior, that fit the mold of people we have struggled against in weeks prior. And that's the part that really, really, really scares me. I think the Bengals are going to come out and Joe's going to have a couple good drives. He's going to do a lot of good things well because he's Joe Burrow. But then the defense still has to step up for 4 quarters, which is going to be a very tough thing to do. And I know the Ravens truthfully haven't looked great either. They barely beat the Browns. They barely beat the Jets. They have not looked great either. But those teams still have better defenses than the Bengals. That's not changing just because they're the Jets and the Browns. Their defenses are still better than ours. So unless maybe the Bengals get some turnover luck this week and things really go their well, I think that's what it's going to take if the Bengals do want to beat Baltimore is forcing a turnover, maybe even 2 to come out on top.
Yeah. The question with this game, and I thought you put it perfectly, this Ravens team has not looked great. They're just not making mistakes on offense, though. Like Lamar, for as bad as he's looked, and I think a lot of it is probably the injury, he hasn't been running, which is very, very weird. And it kind of makes his offense look a little bit worse. It makes his offense look lethargic at times. The question I have, and this goes to the Bengals coaching staff, is I need to see what I saw last year, right? When we talk about that one game where they say, I am going for it. And I hate to say it, but this is, in Joe Burrow's return game, that's how you kind of got to play against this Ravens team. You got to take it from them. And I think that there is a real chance that the Bengals win this game. This is a divisional matchup. Like I said, this Bengals rushing attack has looked good. I think the Bengals are going to have a ton of opportunities because of the overcompensation for Ja'Marr Chase, whether that's Fant, Gesicki, Tinsley. These guys are going to have chances. It just comes down to how quickly can this Bengals offense find its rhythm. And I hate to say it, but we are going to have a 4th down. We are going to have at the end of the game where Zach Taylor has a chance to either kick it or go for it. And those are going to be the points where I think this game turns on its head, because this is going to be a close game. And do I have the confidence in this coaching staff to do that? Not necessarily, but I think that there is a chance that they win this game. So I don't know if they're going to win, but it comes down to
situational coaching, basically, what you're saying. This game is going to come down to situational coaching, which is Zach Taylor's Achilles heel.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Look, Evan, sorry.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Ravens offense, right?
Yeah.
You said it hasn't looked good, and I would definitely agree there. As they've gotten a lot of people back from injury, we know I think it was 1-5 was their start. Yeah. We know they had a lot of injuries, right? And since then, the last 4 or 5 weeks, they've come back and they've kind of really started to pick up steam a little bit. Despite the offense looking disjointed and not as efficient as we would expect, they're still 12th in EPA per play, 12th in EPA per drop back, and 10th in EPA per rush over the last 4 weeks. So it's the last 4 games since Lamar's come back, right? Lamar, yeah, you're right. He hasn't been great. 1 big time throw to 2 turnover worthy plays in that span, but also 7 drops from his receivers in those 4 games. That leads the league easily. So, but looking at that, what works on that offense right now? Zay Flowers is 5th in missed tackles forced among wide receivers. That's kind of problematic against a defense that has struggled at every single level with missed tackles. Derrick Henry, in his last 4 since Lamar's come back, because we know having that threat of the quarterback run improves the yards per carry average of running backs and their efficiency and production. Derrick Henry, since Lamar's been back, 3.79 yards after contact on average, which ranks 6th among running backs. And he's 4th in runs of 15 plus yards. Not exactly known for being a burner, but again, you talked about cold weather, short week, when you're already hurting. Where you think, like, let's say just hypothetically, the Bengals 4 weeks from now, Joe Burrow's back 4 weeks off of injury. T. Higgins is back from his concussion. Jamar's back. You've had a couple weeks to get everybody in rhythm. How are you feeling about this team? Better, right?
Yeah.
That's how the Ravens feel about their team right now. They got their whole defense back. Kyle Hamilton's out there hitting. Roquan is looking better than he did at the start of the season. They are actually starting to play together as a good unit despite their struggles that they had in the early part of the season. When you look at the defense, since week 9, when Lamar came back, they're 2nd in EPA per play, 3rd in success rate, 1st in rush EPA, and 5th in dropback EPA. It's a top 5 defense. And so that's where I have the problem of you're on a short week. You've got your quarterback coming back from injury. You're missing one of your top 2 receivers. You're already kind of behind the 8 ball. And then we add in the fact that you're playing a top 5 defense, whereas the Ravens, who disjointed as they may be, are still a top 12 offense going up against arguably the worst NFL defense in the last 40 years. That is where I find it hard from a realistic perspective to choose the Bengals to win on this short week. I think they're going to have a much better go of it when the Ravens come to Cincinnati in a couple weeks. You get T. Higgins back. You've got Joe Burrow with a little bit of that rush shaken off, maybe a little bit of the timing worked out. But yeah, it's just hard for me considering all of those things right now to pick the Bengals to win this one.
Yeah. You got anything else you want to add before we head out of here?
Yeah, no, not much. I think that this game it can take a lot of twists and turns. I'm just excited to watch Joe Burrow out here, and I do think that the biggest conversation it's going to be the Zach Taylor. I'm excited to see how he looks up to the test, because the fact of the matter is they are 1-8 in the past 9 games. This is a big game for him. You get your first game back with Joe Burrow. This could really dictate how his career plays out in Cincinnati. So I'm excited to see if he answers the call, and I'm excited to see how this offense looks. And I hate to say it, at the end of the day, though, they put themselves in this situation. So for as good as Joe Burrow may look, and as Bengals fans, we can be happy and say, hey, they look good. This bodes well for the future. It may not bode well for Zach Taylor's future if they lose this game. So excited to see how the situational coaching looks.
One thing I will say before we head out of here is, wouldn't it be the most Zach Taylor-esque thing in Bengals-led thing to beat the Baltimore Ravens on Thursday night, turn around, go to Buffalo, and a team that Joe Burrow has never lost to, beat the Buffalo Bills? Wouldn't that be the most Bengal-esque thing?
Yeah.
Because I personally this is weird thing going on with Lamar Jackson where he practices like once a week or something like that happening now. Like once a week and then half.
So like Calvin Johnson treatment?
Yeah, it's weird. It's strange. I have a feeling the Bengals might win this game, guys. I don't know why. And y'all know I've been pretty spot on with things. I saw them beating the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I saw them losing to the Patriots, all that. I see them beating the Baltimore Ravens tomorrow. Then I see them beating, and I think that if they beat the Baltimore Ravens tomorrow, I think they then go on to beat the Buffalo Bills. I do not know anything beyond that. But that being said, if they are to lose tomorrow, I still have to beat the Buffalo Bills the next week, because it's just like clockwork. It happens. I don't know why. Just for whatever reason, they just tend to have that team's number. But anyway, I think everything that the Bengals are playing for right now is keeping this team together. They're fighting for pride, obviously, at this point, but they're obviously trying to put good tape out there for whoever the future head coach might be, if it isn't Zach Taylor here next year. But I definitely feel like Zach Taylor is coaching for his future here in Cincinnati. Not just this game, but every single game. But if you lose this game, I don't really think it matters too much. I think it's curtains. But it's going to be a tall task. Going to Baltimore, like Evan said, they got all their defensive pieces back. It's a tough environment to play. It's a place that hasn't been too kind to the Bengals. Thursday nights haven't been too great to the Bengals. But we're going to find out a lot. We're going to find out a lot about this team. Let us know down in the comment section what you guys think about this game. If you guys could do us a huge favor, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you guys never miss when we go live or when we upload content from the TWSN studios. Remember, we also have merch. You guys spoke and we listened. We have State of the Jungle merch, sit down, Malik Wright merch. Evan's wearing some of the merch right now. Logan's wearing some of the merch, and Daniel's wearing some of the merch right now. We hope that you guys support us. We have it up on the screen as well with the QR code. So if you guys want, you can also look in the description to find out where some of that merch is. But other than that, we hope that you guys have an awesome Thanksgiving with you and yours. We appreciate you guys for spending your Thanksgiving Eve with us. And as always,